Okay, we will get cracking. Tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou katoa, ko Claire Coleman toku inga, kia ora, and welcome to this afternoon's after-school special on the technology curriculum. I'm going to start with karakia, and then I will introduce my lovely expert speaker. Kia hora ti marino, kia whakapapa po namo ti moana, he huarahi mā tātou I te rangi nei. Araha atu, araha mai, tātou e tātou katoa. So I like that one. So peaceful and recentering and clearing the space with love. And yes, I'll let you introduce yourself, Kate, who is here to speak to us a little bit more about her expertise in technology.
Hey, kia ora everyone. Thank you for having me, Claire. So, ko Kate Rhodes toku ingoa. I am one of the teaching fellows at the University of Waikato, and I work teaching people who would like to be teachers to be teachers, and work in technology education and also across some of the other STEM subject areas. I specialise particularly in digital technology within the technology curriculum. So thanks for having me.
Thank you, Kate. All right, so for those of you who are not familiar with how these roll, but essentially what we'll do is we'll start with kind of a look at the content, some key issues in the content around the draft technology curriculum document, and we'll sort of move our way through that. And then that'll take us about 15 to 20 minutes, and then we'll move to talking about how you can engage in the consultation process, and I'll just show you the resourcing and the links that you can follow so that you yourself can make a curriculum submission on the curriculum document itself. All right, so let's go to my handy page screen sharing. Yes, good. I'm glad you're here. It's telling me it's here. Lovely. Okay, so we're going to click in to look at some of the key issues. This is our base document. Yes, we do wish to continue. And here we go. Now, you'll have to forgive me. I couldn't make the brown color in my Gamma PowerPoint when I was doing it. So we'll have this slightly varied colored convection here. And I hope that's suitable to everyone. And I hope you can all see what I'm looking at today. So we'll move through the areas that are focused on in the consultation period, in the consultation survey, so that it kind of follows that line of thinking. So we'll begin with looking at the purpose statement. And I should say that the comment we've received from people who have given me their thoughts and expert opinion on the technology draft is that the purpose statement does have some merits. It does seem to set out a really clear sense of what technology can be and could be. It has the omission of not having the section around spatial design, how we kind of interact with space, which is often a really integral part of the technology area. But it does set a sort of intention that seems to align with current and hopefully future technology practice. It is also, the statement, however, is a little bit light on design thinking, which underpins all of our technology areas, and may sort of lend into that sort of replication of the myth that it's all about making metal planes, as in my image up the top there, or doing some sort of craft. So the key issues around that statement are that listening around the value of design and technological outcomes. The focus is more around using and understanding technologies, but not so much around the capabilities and the skills and knowledges and practices of technology and how you apply those in authentic contexts. And there's a feeling that potentially the vision and the potential of that learning area has been curtailed, has been lessened. Kate, do you want to talk to that purpose statement a little?
Yeah, thanks, Claire. I think, as you've said, I think that, the purpose statement does unpack quite a few or consider quite a few elements of technology education and what's there. And when we think about the nature of technology and design thinking, there is some evidence of it there. But there is, when we go and look at the rest of the document, it doesn't really seem to align. There seems to be a little bit of a mismatch between what this purpose statement is telling us that we should be doing or that we want to be seeing in classrooms, and then those teaching statements and what those look like, whether these two areas really connect with one another.
Okay, thanks, Kate. Sorry, I just realized I muted myself, so I had to unmute.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, into looking at the structuring of the learning area. Now, this seemed to be something people felt quite strongly that the structuring along these strands didn't really encompass the whole learning area, and had lost a lot of the kind of crucial elements of technology as a learning area in terms of how it is meaningful to learners and how it has connection and authenticity. So that idea more, I think about the way that we might um, behave and engage in ways that are using our technological thinking skills, our critical thinking skills, our design thinking skills, the way we might innovate and those sorts of things. And it had shifted to a bit more focus on just sort of the here is the what you do and the skills and techniques, as opposed to thinking about the social context for it as well. There's also this loss of the technological practice knowledge areas and also the nature of technology, which was a concern. So those elements really gave it coherence. And in terms of its international standing, as I understand it, Kate, and you may speak to this more, it was considered pretty good, the technology curriculum. And that's remembering again that New Zealand Aotearoa had reworked its technology curriculum quite recently as well. And it had a good sense of international standing as being a curriculum that did recognise the real world space for technology, and that sense of the nature of technology. Why are we doing it? What's going on with it? And how are we engaging in processes and practices that are coming out of tackling real world problems or identifying real world opportunities? And then again, there's that comment around design thinking, that it really only seems to come into the mix in phase 4, but actually it's something that should be ongoing throughout the phases. Kate?
Yeah, so I think it's the technology curriculum is a little bit tricky because obviously it was originally written in 2007, then it was updated in 2017. But really, in that 2007 document, we've got the brief development, we've got the planning for practice, and all those elements really of design process that are the same across any discipline that you do in technology practice. This doesn't unpack those in quite the same way, although I do think some of them are quite evident. Like if you look for design brief, there's quite a lot of information about design brief there. There's quite a lot of information about planning for practice and things like that. But there are other aspects that are missing. It is obviously quite different depending on the areas. I'm sort of primary focused, but then as you go higher up the schooling, that separation out of the areas is a little bit trickier. It's we've got sort of that design and making is just that generic strand going kind of across everything at the beginning, which is interesting. So, and then we've got this sort of like mismatch of in year 3, we're going into some of the computational thinking elements, but not in year 1 or 2. And then we don't see that again till year 6. So it's quite interesting the way that it's unpacked. There are some quite specific things, obviously, like they want that really explicit teaching going on. But I feel like there are quite a few things that they are missing from that have carried across from the 2007 area. But then they have had to amalgamate the digital learning areas with the 2007 areas. And they were not very well aligned because they were looking at achievement objectives and the difference between progress outcomes as well. So there has been some coming together of those, which is quite nice. And I think that the representation of digital technologies a lot more is actually quite a positive outcome of this at the moment that I can see. Yeah.
Super. Thank you, Kate. I think you've hit on that section. If we move into looking at the introduction in the draft curriculum, that it's not really a comment being that it's not capturing the different emphasis around cross phases. So again, thinking about developmentally where our learners are, but also that notion, as you just mentioned, around computational thinking, that it's not in the beginning it's not in the early phase 1 material. It just sort of poof appears. Which seems a bit odd when you think young children are absolutely curious and questioning and want to know things and play with things and need to be starting to really think about how we position our learners as agentic members of society who can start thinking about how to solve problems, right? In our ever-changing IA, evolving world, that those would be things that you think should be, from the get-go. The other big thing around the introduction, I think, is, and I mentioned this before, is that idea around technology is kind of an abstract thing that's distinct from people, which, it seems is a strange thing a strange way to position technology when you think about how important it is in terms of how, technology is literally about something that was created by people for people. It's a seeing of an opportunity. It's a developing on. It's a building on. Right. It's absolutely to do with human endeavor, and having that signaled in the nature of technology is really vital, I think, for encouraging learners to feel like they can make connection to it, they can do it. It is a place of generating innovation and creative ideas, and not just something they kind of learn about, but something they themselves have a role to play in. Kate, do you have anything else on that one?
Yeah, I just think that, that general, as you've really said, that understanding that, technology really is socially situated. And again, there's some unpacking of that in the initial purpose statement, where they're looking at, the interaction across cultures, including Te Ao Māori, and informing processes and innovation. But then it's, if we're actually seeing that in the teaching statements and the flow of teaching statements that are happening and across the phases, it seems a little bit disjointed. I think that there are some really great things in this new draft curriculum, but there's a few things that are not quite there or are quite disjointed, and definitely it feels as if it's been written by several different people, possibly, is what's happened here. I'm not sure.
And that kind of brings us to something that we've talked about in the other webinar sessions as well, which is around that coherence, right? And how important that coherence across the phases and within the phases and between learning areas is really going to be, particularly for our primary and intermediate teachers who don't necessarily have a learning area specialist. They're teaching across. They need to try and think about how they're going to integrate. And there's lots of wonderful space for technology education, as we were talking about earlier, Kate, to integrate across with other learning areas. But that's not going to work if there's such a lack of cohesion, in all of these different documents, if they are sort of so different, in terms of the language, in terms of the leveling, in terms of, the kinds of content that they'll be engaging with. So across the phase teaching sequences, these are some things just about particular phases. So phase 1, there's a feeling that it was underestimating young children, that the work in that phase is kind of too simplistic and is not, seizing upon their natural curiosity and their natural interest in lots of these things, and recognizing the changing world around them and their engagement with digital technologies, but also all kinds of other things, and recognizing that nature of technology. In phase 2, there's an issue around the language and sequencing, and I'll come to you, Kate, to talk a bit more about that, which of course will cause concerns about trying to have an equitable experience if you've got different things happening. In phase 3, there's a feeling around the time allocation, and how suitable that might be in the current environment with other timing mandates for different learning areas. And then phase 4, it seems like there was some real concerns about the quantity of the material and the leveling of those knowledge statements, and how they may or may not respond to moving forward into phase 5. Kate, I'll go back to you now on this one. Across the phases.
Across the phases, yes. So I think here probably the best thing I can do is just give a couple of examples. I mean, in a way, I like, because I teach people who are training to be teachers, it's quite nice for them to have that really explicit understanding of this is what they need to do. But there's, that consistency across each of, even within the phases, isn't there? So, for example, in year 2, they're looking at describing how something looks, and then in brackets it talks about aesthetics. And then in year 3, we're looking at how something can be determined by how it looks, and then we start talking about physical. So it's just that language is not consistent across. That's from year 2 to 3. So I think when we're giving feedback, it's just important to consider, if we're teaching year 2 and 3 children, how that consistency and that understanding and developing that would be quite important. We do come into, as I've said, in year 3, there is computational thinking, but then computational thinking is not actually mentioned again until year 6. So there's no computational thinking at year 4 and 5. So we've kind of got a little bit of a discrepancy here where we've got year 1 and 2 are designing and looking at design, and they're looking at materials and ingredients for year 1 and 2. But then in year 3, they're doing both of those, and then they're also including computational thinking. Then if we look at year 4 and year 5, we're looking at design, materials and ingredients, and system thinking. But then that's for year 4 and 5. But then in year 6, we're doing those 3 areas. And then we're also doing digital technologies and computational thinking, which are split into 2 separate things. So, and then when we start going up to year 7 and 8, so into phase 3, there is a lot of information to cover, where we have, if I can remind myself how many, 2, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 different areas that we're needing to cover in those years, which seems, it's tricky. I think that there needs to be more consistency possibly across each of the year levels. So there is some computational thinking in phase 1, phase 2 and phase 3, but maybe some more consistency across all of the year levels, or looking at how we can teach those. My concern there would be that a year 6 teacher will not have time to teach all of those areas, so something will have to give, and often it will be the same thing that ends up giving all the time. So then students might not be exposed to an area that they need to. So a little bit more, thought about how that could work in terms of the feedback.
I think I'm just noting the time and obviously having to move everyone through this quickly. And I think we've touched on some of these things in terms of that cross-phase summary. Can you speak at all about the place or the absence of Mātauranga Māori, Kate?
Yeah, so again, I think in the purpose statements, it's sort of alluded to, saying that there needs to be that inclusion of Te Ao Māori. However, when we think about they've given some examples of technologists or technology practice, but none of those they're not even specific to Aotearoa. So let alone Te Ao Māori. And I think it's really important that children can actually see themselves in these curriculum areas. So we want to be giving them those examples of people who are relevant to them and they can see themselves in. And particularly when we think about technology, there's still an underrepresentation of Indigenous people and girls in the STEM areas. So it's quite important that we're sort of, highlighting these. We have a lot of famous New Zealanders who have been quite prevalent in the technology space. So highlighting those would be a really, really great thing to do.
Okay, we'll just move to those sort of final overall comments. And as I say, I'll take you through the consultation process. So a positive that we had was the sense that perhaps, and you've alluded to this as well, Kate, a bit more explicit content guidance might be easier for some of our beginning teachers or teachers who are just, not as confident in the technology space to know what they might want to teach, and that might improve the equity of access.
Yep.
There is a concern that this is returning to kind of that skill-focused program, and we go back to that, the woodwork, metalwork of my childhood, where you went off to the little technology silos. Yep. The concern around the content and the space, and that the content over kind of practices or capacities or ways of thinking. And then, the concern about New Zealand's position in terms of technology education, because it had that nature of technology, it was really, leading the world. The authentic engagement with Te Ao Māori and giving examples, as you said, in those examples. I mean, they are only examples, not mandated content, but they give a signal, I think, to teachers around what they can use. And there are plenty of wonderful Māori Pacific technologists.
Absolutely.
Both current and historic. That would be wonderful to draw upon. And then looking at the volume of content. So 9 and 10, thinking about timetable structures. How are those things going to be reworked to account for this? Is it possible to do this? Is it teachable? I think is one of the crucial elements that teachers will be looking to. And then thinking again around that languaging. Do you have anything else, last gasp, Kate, on this one?
No, I think that's pretty much it. Pretty much covered everything there.
Okay, so we'll now move to, I'll stop sharing for a moment, and I can't see the comments. Can you see the comments, Kate? Have we got anyone making any comments? Oh no, very quiet. That's lovely. Okay, we will now just go back to the consultation link, and I will give you all that link in the chat. So you can go and join this. And hopefully that's the right one. And I will just change what screen I'm sharing. Should have got really fast at this now, shouldn't I? Okay, so this link that I've posted into the chat is a guide, essentially, to the technology learning area for consultation. This button here will take you to that summary website we've just looked at that kind of takes you through those key issues. This little click through here will take you to the learning area itself. So you're wanting to go into Taharangi, it's nice and quick. You want to go then to the file downloads, potentially, if you want to look at it, in all its paper glory. And you'll see when you look here, you can get each individual year level. I do think it's important, regardless of what year level or phase you're teaching at, that you have a look at the whole thing so you can have that sense. As we've discussed, there's some real concerns around the coherence inside a phase, but also across phases. So my advice would be to come down to this draft here, which is the full document. Yes, it's many pieces of paper. So if you want to save a tree, just look at it online. But I think it's really useful to get a good kind of cross section of the whole thing.
Yeah.
That link takes you there. And then click. This link here will take you to the consultation document itself, which is a SurveyMonkey style thing. And you can see, you just click through that there. These are the key areas that they're looking for your feedback on, as we talked about: the purpose statement, the structure, and the introduction. And these are the things it's asking you to consider. So have you got the right conceptual understandings? I've got arts in there, must change that. Does it capture the sense of technology? Does it, what are the things you're wanting to give? Does it have a sense of the knowledge strands? There is a place you might want to comment about what the knowledge strands are and the emphasis that it's making in the learning areas. It's asking you for organization and clarity. So some of the conversation we've had about the language, about the leveling, is something that you might want to bring in here between phases and within the phase. Is it thinking about depth of engagement? And again, this comes back to, I think, thinking about what is technology and that nature of technology being beyond just making stuff and building stuff, but also the kind of practices and ways of thinking that technology invites us into. And then thinking about what you think is missing. And I think we've already talked a little bit about some of the things that seem to be missing through the document. Or maybe where it seems uneven. It's overloaded in some places and maybe undercooked in others. So then we'll ask you for some overall comments, and it will ask you for your thoughts too about any resourcing or support material that you as a school or as a kayako might need. On the last bit here, and then I'll go back to you, Kate, what I've also put onto here is a few other little readings on the technology draft. And if you click through into these buttons here, there are some further resources from TENS about making a curriculum submission. So they've done some other unpacking and work for you as well. And you might like to have a look at those resources and see their submission guide. So all of this is in one place and available for you to tootle through at your own time. Kate, do you have any other thoughts around the consultation that you'd like to share?
Yeah, I think just that TENS document, that was, a lot of time was put into that to create. It's a really good document to just go and have a quick look through down at the bottom there. And also, when you do go in and give your feedback, it asks you to give feedback for each phase. So if you are at a particular phase and you really want to focus on that, you can just do that. You don't actually have to fill in every single box there. So so you can just go in and do parts of it if you want to. But yeah, really important, I think, that we're getting our voice out there and talking about what we want, because this curriculum is going to be out before we know it, I think.
And I think it's the other things to note, and I've talked about this in the other webinars, they do consider a submission like a count of one. So if you want to have your voice heard on maths, I would suggest you do these these submissions individually rather than a cohort. I think it's a really good thing perhaps to work with somebody on the thinking around this, maybe going through the documents here and having an unpack of it, but then making that submission individually can be really powerful. The other thing I would say is that there is an opportunity at the end of the SurveyMonkey to upload further thoughts or documentation. So if you've got more to say and there wasn't enough space in the boxes, you can add and upload your own documents in there. It's a fairly open-ended survey, so it is really just asking you these questions with then a box to fill in. So, I think it's quite helpful in that way that you can talk about the issues that particularly speak to you or that you're particularly concerned with.
Yeah.
And I think that's probably us. Is there anyone in the chat who would like to ask anything further while we have a couple of extra minutes before I close out with karakia? Just going to look now because I've said that. And now I can't say. Is there a homepage for all the subjects? There is a homepage for all the subjects question, and if you give me a moment, I will locate it for you. I'm assuming, Christine, that you mean in terms of the resources that I've made. I have got a landing page, which you'll see right now has got the arts and science consultation guides on it, and technology will go up there later today. And that will be where the remaining learning area materials will be placed as well. So I'll pop that in the chat for you. And here we go. Yes, I don't know why my link up there that says copy of the art 02. It is the technology site, I can assure you of that. For some reason, I couldn't quite change the link, but I can assure you when you go to it, it is indeed about technology. Okay, well, thank you, everybody, for joining us. Thank you, Kate, for coming on board and giving us your expertise.
Thanks for having me.
The hope with this is that it gives everyone a starting point to start engaging with documentation, starting to feel like you can have a go at this consultation process. Even, because I can appreciate it feels quite overwhelming at the moment. These are some hefty, content-filled documents that are pretty tricky to get started with. So the hope is this at least gives you a launching off point. Okay, I will now just finish with my very short closing karakia. Kia tau te rangamarie, kia runga I ngā iwi o te ao. Let your peace reign on all the people of the world, and I hope it rains on you this afternoon. Ka kite, everybody.